Hey class, in this recording we're going to focus on that period of time immediately after birth known as the puerperium. The puerperium is going to be the first 6 weeks that is postpartum. Usually most people just call this the postpartum phase. Partum referring to the root word patrician, or the birthing process, and post meaning after. But it's also known as puerperium. And this period of time is when the mother's anatomy is going to return back to the pre-pregnancy state. So, or the pre-gravid state, as it's also referred to as. And there's going to be a lot of things that happen. First of all, the abdomen becomes a lot smaller. We have involution, or shrinkage of the uterus. And even within the first week of giving birth, after giving birth, within those first 7 days, the uterus is going to lose approximately half of its weight. So it gets a lot smaller, a lot faster. And this rate, I mean, if we draw a graph on this, we had weight on the y-axis and time on the x-axis. It's kind of an exponential curve down, or a negative logarithmic curve down, I should say. And that during the first week, there's a very rapid change, and then to get back to baseline, it happens slowly towards the end. So during the first week, there's rapid change, rapid involution. We're going to have a lot of autolysis of the cells of the uterus. So the cells that are in the uterus are going to self-destruct. We go through a process known as autolysis, where the lysosomes in those cells of the uterus just digest themselves. Because at this point in time, there's no physical need, there's no functional need to have such a large uterus in the woman's abdominal pelvic cavity. We also find that for the first 10 days postpartum, during this Peurperium state, there's a lot of vaginal discharge. You could think of it as like the heaviest period you could ever, or the heaviest menstrual flow you've ever seen in your life. And one of the things that women who have just given birth are given is a maxi pad that's just enormous. It's like just a giant sponge that you use to wash your dishes. And the reason they're given such enormous maxi pads to use is because during the first couple days, there's a lot of vaginal discharge. And we call this very heavy vaginal discharge that's immediately postpartum lochia. And usually for the first day or two, lochia is going to be very bloody, and there's even going to be large blood clots within the lochia. And then over the period of several days, it goes from red and bloody to kind of a little bit lighter and browner in coloration. And then towards the end, it's mostly serous fluid and some urine that's been discharged. Well, there's a repair to the perineal membranes and perineal muscles so that the woman can regain continence. Because during that birthing process, there is damage to the external urethral sphincter, and incontinence is a very common side effect of vaginal birth, particularly if you've had a woman has had multiple vaginal births. As we look at breastfeeding, this process of breastfeeding is going to promote the involution of the uterus. So in order to help to get the uterus smaller, in order to return to the pre-gravid state, one of the things a female who has just given birth can do is breastfeed. And during that breastfeeding process, the child will suckle, and to watch the rooting reflex of a newborn child, it's really cool. Kids are pre-programmed to find the nipple and the areola of the breast because they need to in order to stay alive. One of the things that happens is this manual stimulation of the areola and the nipple is going to downregulate estrogen secretion. And as we downregulate estrogen secretion, this is going to make the uterus a little bit more flaccid. So the uterus is not going to be swelling up with growth of tissue like it normally would. And then that manual stimulation of the mother's areola and nipple is also going to cause a release of oxytocin. And that oxytocin does a lot of different things. Oxytocin is commonly referred to as the love hormone, in that it's a hormone that when it's coursing through our bloodstream makes it much easier for us to form strong emotional bonds with whoever we associate that hormone with. So when we think of people that are having sexual intercourse, if you achieve orgasm with a sexual partner, that oxytocin that's released during the orgasm process helps you form deep emotional bonds with whoever your sexual partner is. And like most things in life, we have really strong bonding on the very first person, and then as we switch individuals, there's less and less emotional bonding. It's more difficult to form those deep emotional bonds because we've, for lack of a better term, imprinted on those first individuals. So when we think of the child breastfeeding, you can see this was a vaginal birth. You can tell there's still a little bit of cone-headedness going on right here. As we look at the child, this breastfeeding process helps the mother to imprint on the child. And this is a period of time when mom can look at the kid, and the kid oftentimes looks back up at mom. Kid is experiencing a rush of mom's oxytocin in the kid's bloodstream. Mom's experiencing her own oxytocin. And in addition to that, that oxytocin is going to cause the myometrium, the muscular layer of the uterus, to contract and causes the uterus to get smaller quicker. While we're talking about this process, I just want to mention that a current area of research is to research how streaming movies on the internet, streaming videos on the internet is influencing maternal bonding with children. A lot of women now that are breastfeeding get kind of bored with looking at their child while they're breastfeeding, so instead they hold a cell phone in their hand and stare at the cell phone and watch movies on their cell phone instead of making eye contact with the child and having more emotional bonding with the children. And this is a relatively recent phenomenon within the last 5 to 10 years. So some psychologists are interested in looking at how this influences the mother-child relationship later on in life. That's all we have for this recording. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to let me know. And as always, happy studies.